Yeah, I was bored. I called them up.
Did you? God, you were so nice. I think we're writing to within the coming hours, we'll see the police camera footage, because we're pushing ahead to the 6 o'clock
1 minute
of it being released. So we've got our hello and open with our animation coming into our lead here with Memphis. Then we'll get into Sarah Seidner's rap package right off the top there. There is a little pause for Nats in that setup, and then a stop from the mom asking people to
no lives in the first block of the show. Man, there's a lot of stuff. $30 seconds. All right, normal show open for this show. H, 2-shot, sound pre-produced open in A, second H, you're announced, pump shot, and away we go. Roll up on H.
Hello and a warm welcome to our viewers joining us in the United States and all around the world. I'm Bianca Nobile.
I'm Max Foster, joining you live from London, just ahead on CNNi.
Right, check A, take A. 30 seconds here. Straight to your second H and you're announced.
When that tape comes out tomorrow, it's going to be horrific.
This evil, this Russian aggression can and should be stopped only with adequate weapons.
15.
The terrorist state will not understand anything else.
10 seconds, H.
I'm not sure, I mean this sincerely, the news could have been any better. Economic growth is up, stronger than expected.
Roll track resolve H. And announce.
Live from London, this is CNN Newsroom with Max Foster and Bianca Nobile.
Track 11.
It is Friday, January the 27th, 9 a.m. here in London, 3 a.m. in Memphis, Tennessee.
And that's where a vigil was held last night for 29-year-old Tyree Nichols, who died almost 3 weeks ago after a violent altercation with 5 Memphis police officers.
Raw track resolve B. Track above, Q.
Tyree Nichols being a lifelong skateboarder, and last night's vigil was held at one of his favourite skate parks. Nichols' mother issued this caution about the graphic nature of the police video that we're expecting to be made public later today. Have a listen.
Raw track at a C, 30 on the bite. Pilot 1 to pilot 2.
Thank each and every one of you for being here to support my son. Our family is grief-stricken right now, and this is very hard to swallow.
15.
I don't speak very well in front of people. I don't even like talking in front of people, but I just want to say this.
Gonna be
When
horrific.
that tape comes out tomorrow, it's going to be horrific.
And resolve Q, track 11.
All 5 officers who were involved were fired and on Thursday were indicted for second-degree murder, aggravated assault and aggravated kidnapping, among other charges.
And dissolve.
Family's legal team warns that the police footage shows a brutal, non-stop beating that lasted 3 minutes. Law enforcement professionals who've seen it say they're appalled.
Authorities say that Nichols was pulled over on January 7th for reckless driving, was pepper sprayed, and then fled on foot. A warning now, the image you're about to see is disturbing.
Prosecutors say when police finally caught up to Nichols, that's when he suffered serious injuries. This is how he looked afterwards in the hospital. He died 3 days later.
Sources tell CNN that law enforcement agencies across the United States are bracing for protests and potential violence once that footage is released to the public. CNN's Sarah Seidner has the latest from Memphis and a caution that some of the images in her report may be disturbing.
Raw track AC, 3 minutes.
In Memphis, candles burn for a life snuffed out. The life of 29-year-old Tyree Nichols being remembered where
But
friends
this
say
we've got a
he
little
felt
bit
the
of a
most
setup
free,
here looking
a
at one
skate
of
park.
the
12
county
years
district
ago,
attorneys,
Nichols
so
seen
there's a
here
little bit of a
doing what he
side. There
loved.
is an on-cam
12 years
tag on
later,
that where we're
he
gonna
ended
push
up
ahead
dead.
there to more
Officials
later in
say
the show.
beaten
We're gonna
by
pause for
5
quick
men
business
sworn
trends,
to
and then
protect and
next we'll
serve.
look at our market
The grand
check.
jury
As of right now,
returned
everything is down
indictments
for the
against
US
all
futures.
five
Everything
with the
is up
same
for Europe,
charges.
and everything is also
While
up
each
for
of the
Asia.
5 individuals played a
Bianco then
different
will take it
role
away
in the
there with the
incident
markets
in
check.
question,
There's a pause for naps,
the
and then
actions
we'll
of
get
all of
into
them
Biden's economy
resulted
with
in the
Phil
death
Mattingly's
of
report.
Tyree Nichols, and they are all responsible.
Justin Smith, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Desmond Mills, and Emmett Martin III were all fired from the Memphis Police Department and now stand charged with 7 crimes. 2nd-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, official misconduct, and official oppression. And there is police body cam and sky camera video showing it all, something police
2 minutes.
will soon release to the public.
St. Banners
I'm
for
grieved.
get us into the next round.
Frankly, I'm shocked. I'm sickened by what I saw. What happened here does not at all reflect proper policing. This was wrong. This was criminal.
Attorneys for 2 of the former officers responded to the TBI's damning statement. When you heard that, what did you think, and have your clients heard all of the charges against them?
I thought, I wish I'd seen that video so I could evaluate what he said.
To say things like that when you have a tinderbox that we're all concerned about, I have questions about whether those were the right words to use, whether this was the right timing, and whether the government should be saying those things about people who are innocent until proven guilty when you know that's going to be broadcast to potential jurors.
But Nichols' family wants people to know more about Tyree Nichols than how he died.
Nobody's perfect, okay? Nobody. But he was damn near. My son was a beautiful soul, and he touched everyone.
Nichols had his mama's name tattooed on his arm. He wasn't just her beautiful boy. He was also a father who loved having fun. His friend who knew him in Sacramento told a local newspaper he had such a free spirit, and skating gave him his wings. He worked at FedEx, but had other dreams. Photography. In his own words, he posted, "People have a story to tell. Why not capture it instead of doing the norm and writing it down and speaking it?" It turns out what led to his death was captured on camera. Bail has been set for the officers as high as $350,000. Some of them have already bailed out of jail. Sarah Simon, CNN, Memphis.
Q, take, ready,
The Shelby County District Attorney spoke earlier with CNN's Aaron Burnett about the police footage of the incident.
Aaron asked if something had happened at the initial traffic stop that escalated into this violent confrontation. Take a listen.
Right, Shaggy, good day. Minute 45.
I wish I could give a definitive answer to that. I don't think I do know.
Business,
from
no,
the video
tag, then
that
a business
we have,
transition
the officers were
to
already
PC 4000.
highly charged up from the very beginning of the video.
Stephen Howie, I'm going to the graphic off the top of
incident, the
04.
first altercation, and then it just escalated further from there.
Keith's got quick
So
fingers,
to
but
that
that's all that
point,
stuff
when you're
in
saying
2
they were
seconds.
highly charged up from the very beginning,
Down the
I
road,
understand
you
these
will be
officers were part of a
011
so-called
instead of
scorpion unit
107.
that tackles organized crime. Do you have
You
any
bring
evidence at this
0111
point to
somewhere.
suggest that when they pulled him over, or perhaps the
about
reason
New
that they
Zealand?
pulled him over, or when they
The
pulled him over they
images are
found out, I don't know
stunning.
which it could be, if
I mean, we've got
either,
it in our
that they
40s
knew
block
who he
image is
was?
so good. I mean, I'm sorry for New Zealand, but those images.
We don't have
are
any evidence to that effect right now.
No evidence to that effect, but you're saying they appeared
they're
this
just
way from the very
evacuating
beginning of the video. One other question to you on the timeline then, I know you've talked about that the injuries being sustained were in the second altercation. How much time passed generally, or do you know the specific between when the encounter started and that second altercation?
It was only a few minutes. Mr. Nichols fled on foot, and then there was a 10 to 20 minute, I
St.
forget the
Banners for
exact
tag.
amount of time, chase before
Tag,
they
then the
eventually
business transition to
found
PC
him
4000.
and tackled him, and then the
US
second
features
incident
all
occurred. And I
down.
should just clarify,
20
the
seconds.
video that we have doesn't start from the very beginning of the altercation. It kind of cuts in as the first
10 seconds.
encounter is in progress. And so that's what I mean
Now,
when I
Q,
say
see
they were
what we
already
need.
highly charged. And I think When everyone
5
watches
seconds.
the video tomorrow night when it's released, everyone will see what we mean.
And take.
Shelby County
Stand by your
District
business
Attorney
trends,
Steve
please scroll
Mulroy
down.
speaking
You
with
good?
CNN earlier, and we'll have more on this
Yeah, I
story
just have to
later on
learn
in
business
this
trends.
hour.
And transit.
The new trading day gets
Google is
underway
next.
in the US in about 5 hours from now. Here's how the futures stand right now. The Nasdaq potentially the lowest at 0.0%
And
down.
Google.
Meanwhile, the European markets
Stand by.
up and running, a
when?
bit more positive here. Initially starting up, as was the case across
White.
Asia, as those markets
Two-shot
closed.
next to
So
US
pretty
markets.
positive day around the world.
Investors in the US
B, that
markets were
pause.
buoyed by positive economic news on Thursday.
Roll, take B, track. Q, track them both. Ready, pilot
Stocks
stand
on Wall Street rose after the government reported the economy grew at a pace of 2.9% in the fourth quarter. The number of Americans filing jobless claims continued to fall.
And
The Dow gained 0.6% on the day.
next.
The Nasdaq surged, finishing 1
It's Biden.
3/4% higher, and the S&P
Sneak it
500 added more than 1%.
And take.
President Biden is taking credit for the positive economic report,
doing what
and
they
he's
used to call a
warning that the
photo bomb.
proposals being floated by MAGA Republicans
Sound on
in the
C.
House would cause chaos. CNN's Phil Mattingly reports from the White House.
Roger, take C, 215.
White House officials scheduled President Biden's travels on Thursday to Virginia, knowing they wanted to give a speech
we have
on
a
the
quick
economy, a
update here
speech
on
that draws
Council
sharp
classified
economic
documents, and
contrast
we've
from
got
House
Musk visiting
Republicans, who've
McCarthy
just
and
taken the
Jeffries,
majority,
and
but
then
also
we'll end
knowing
here
that
pushing
pretty
event
important
deploys
economic
as
data
attack
will be coming
footage
out
level
the
will
same
be
day.
released
Data they
later
didn't
today.
actually know
Well,
how it was
and then
going
we've
to
got
land.
3 teasers
Well,
to
it
commercial break,
landed,
and then we'll
and
bump
for
out
their
here,
sake,
so
it landed quite
just
well,
be aware,
actually,
you'll be in
quite
a bump
perfectly
here.
timed for an economic speech. Fourth quarter GDP
Steven,
coming
so we're
in
gonna
at
head to the next block.
2.9%,
Selma will be
higher
on
than
set
most
with
estimates
them.
had
CNNi
things.
on
Unemployment
CNNi 3.
numbers, unemployment claims
And
coming
Exit 1 is
in
still
lower than I
850.
think the expectation was going
And
in by
that is it for
economists.
live shots.
Another point of good news, and when you talk to White House officials who have maintained that not only have they had a rapid recovery from the post-pandemic timeline, but also a rather resilient economy up to this point, they've made clear they believe not only will that continue, that it is one heck of a political message. One, the president rolled out at that Virginia event. Take a listen.
Economic growth is up,
Is it her? Is somebody eating
stronger
something?
than expert
Do you hear the
expected at
clinking?
2.9%
listening to
growth.
Oh. It's just-
Jobs. Jobs are the
Yes,
highest
sir.
in American number and the highest in American history. And wages are up. They're growing faster than inflation.
1 minute.
And I don't
Standard
think
out
it's fair
here.
to say that this is all evidence that the Biden economic plan, because y'all is actually working.
Now, there are still obvious concerns when it comes to the economy. Certain
Bianca
sectors of the
mixing
economy,
your
particularly
tea.
on the technology
Is that what
side of
it
things, showing
It's so bright,
significant
it's really
layoffs. But
annoying.
overall, despite global fragility, despite no shortage of potential geopolitical issues, very real geopolitical issues, the U.S.
Yeah, you
economy
really
has
don't need
continued
anything in your
to
tea.
grow. It has continued to
30
create
seconds.
jobs. It has
Except
continued
bourbon.
to underscore to some degree what President
Well,
Biden
not
has
during
laid out,
work,
that
that's
evidence
after
he
work.
points to. And that evidence will be rolled out day after day in the weeks ahead by the president himself. He'll be traveling, having multiple events talking about the economy in the days ahead.
You're
20
right.
seconds,
State
standing
of
out
the
here.
Union on February 7th, where the economy,
Come out
that
of the
contrast
two-shot
with
with
Republicans,
unclear
and
F.
certainly the agenda that he's passed and will be implementing in the
So
year
you're
ahead
open up the sky.
will be a critical
10
focus.
seconds.
Also probably a critical focus of another big announcement coming, re-election, something officials
Q is
say he
your,
could do
White-
as
the
soon
White
as next
House.
month. Phil Mattingly, CNN, the White House.
Q, take unclear
The
if.
US
3A.
Justice Department will have to decide whether to appoint yet another special counsel to investigate the mishandling of classified documents. This time, ones belonging to former US Vice President Mike.
Roll,
His
take
lawyer
A.
discovered about a dozen documents at Pence's home in Indiana last week, which have since been turned over to the
Straight to
FBI.
B.
The review is underway into how they got there.
Roll, to B.
Pence has repeatedly said that
C
he
is next,
had no
banners come out
classified
for C.
documents in his possession. He's not yet announced whether he plans to run for US President in 2024, and that could be a factor in how his case is handled.
Roll, good to
Meanwhile,
see.
Twitter CEO
A is
Elon
next,
Musk
A gets
tweeted
Musk.
that he met with Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on Thursday to make sure the platform is fair to both
Roll A.
parties.
Good
McCarthy, who just turned 58, wouldn't comment on what was
two-shot
discussed
with
other than to
recordings
say that
related.
Musk came by to wish him a happy birthday. The meeting comes ahead of a committee hearing focused on Twitter and how it handled a story about a laptop belonging to the US President's son, Hunter Biden. House Republicans have accused social media giants of conservative censorship.
On camera, take
And in the coming hours, California authorities will release recordings related to the attack on Paul Pelosi, husband of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Materials to be released include 911 audio, police body camera footage, and home surveillance video.
The coalition of news organisations, including CNN, went to court to secure the release of the recordings. Paul Pelosi was attacked at the couple's home in October by a man with a hammer. The suspect has pleaded not guilty to multiple state and federal charges.
Ukraine is pressing the West for more weapons despite just clinching a promise to get advanced tanks. Still ahead, we look at whether Russian strikes have bolstered Kyiev's argument for more military muscle.
Plus airstrikes from Israel, rocket fire from Gaza, and a deadly raid in the West Bank, and fears of further violence growing.
Plus, the Pentagon announces a U.S. military operation targeting a senior ISIS leader in Somalia. We're live from Johannesburg with those details.
And dissolve bomb shots up. These are full. Right break master. 3, 4, 5. We'll do the Russia war on Ukraine bump off the trans.
Did you guys see Salma anywhere by you guys? Okay, brilliant. Selma's on her way. She'll be making her way. No stop this hour.
We got 3 minutes. No worries. Oh, you got to show it to us then. Oh, is that the 23? Yeah, we're not doing that. Moving by itself?
Bless you. Question?
I remember that first Robo system we got. It did do that.
The robots are taking over.
It's true. I don't know. I've never done Robo at BBC.
So we're doing our setup here with our animation in on Ukraine latest. There's a quick shot here with the president before we bring Salma on set. It'll be a one and done, and Bianca's got Salma.
I see Bianca and Salma color coordinated today. 2 minutes. They couldn't get Max to wear a red tie, huh?
Max, why didn't you wear a red tie? You would have matched with Bianca and Salma.
It's because Max doesn't get those emails before he leaves for work. So no sound for Selma this time.
You guys look like Christmas. The two of you together look like Christmas. You're in red and he's in green.
1 minute.
Although you can tell she's wearing black and he's wearing blue, and it's very off.
Don't even worry about what you're doing.
Oh.
30 seconds. Well, that's when you create a red map and you crop it down and. This will be your Russia war on Ukraine transition coming in. You might want to clear all that crap out. Here comes your bump trans. Hit it. Come on, Ukraine pushes. Check them both.
Ukraine, making the case for more Western weapons following the latest barrage of Russian missile strikes.
Kyiv says dozens of drones and missiles were fired on targets across Ukraine on Thursday, killing at least 11 people and leaving 11 others wounded. Ukraine says most of the missiles were shot down, but dozens of buildings and power facilities still took heavy damage from the strikes.
The Russian attacks came just hours after Western allies agreed to send their advanced tanks to Ukraine. In response, the Kremlin now accuses the West of direct involvement in the war. But the Ukrainian president says Kyiv needs even more firepower.
Roll track, you see, 15 seconds.
This evil, this Russian aggression can and should be stopped only with adequate weapons. The terrorist state will
5
not
seconds.
understand anything
Protect
else.
our skies.
Weapons on the battlefield, weapons that protect our skies.
Here, take. You're hot.
Salma Abdelaziz joins us now for more on these developments. Salma, we know that Zelensky is always pushing for as much procurement as he can get to try and bolster Ukraine's defences. We're expecting this offensive in the spring, this renewed push from Russia. What are his procurement priorities now that he has this commitment on tanks?
Now that he has this commitment on tanks, I think President Zelensky senses that the door has opened a little bit, that there is greater political will, that NATO is more confident in standing up against the Kremlin and less afraid of the consequences potentially as they were earlier in this war when you heard threats as far as using nuclear weapons from coming from Russia. Everything is on the wish list. Actually, everything. From fighter jets to longer range missiles to ammunition, everything is on President Zelensky's wish list. Why is that? Well, he has an army that a lot of times is dependent on Soviet-era equipment. It's simply not up to the standards of NATO, and he wants to modernize it. And he's facing a much larger fighting force in Russia. So while he can't have a quantitative advantage, what he can have is a qualitative advantage. But these tanks heading to Ukraine, we have to remember it's not a magic bullet here. Zelensky had requested some 300 tanks. He's going to get just over 100, and there's quite a long lag time here. You have these Leopard 2 tanks coming from over a dozen countries. You have a lot of logistical questions there. How are you going to get them there? How long is the training going to take? What is the compensation for these countries? How do they replenish their stocks? All of that now being handled in Berlin, where German officials say we could see these tanks on the battlefield as early as March, ahead of that counter-offensive. And President Zelensky has described these tanks potentially as the Iron Fist, the thing that will spearhead this ground offensive. And you have to remember, this is absolutely an infantry war. It is about gaining inch by inch ground. That's why these tanks are so important. But for President Zelensky, this is just the beginning. He's already moved on to the next thing on the wish list. And for him, the sky's the limit. He's not going to stop asking.
And he gets what he wants, generally. Salma, thank you. Israel, meanwhile, unleashing new airstrikes on Gaza, saying it targeted a rocket-making site belonging to Hamas. That's after Gaza militants fired several missiles at Israel. And that was in response to a lethal raid by Israeli forces on a Jenin refugee camp that turned into a deadly day for Palestinians in the West Bank. One of the deadliest in more than a year.
Right, Jackie, good day. And you make the B sound.
Israel Border Police released this helmet video from the raid. An IDF spokesperson told CNN the military was responding to intelligence about an imminent attack and moved in to apprehend a, quote, terror squad. CNN's Hada Skoll has been tracking all of this from Jerusalem.
Robbie, track to B, minute 30.
At least 9 Palestinians were killed during an unusual daytime Israeli military raid in Jenin in the West Bank. The Israelis say they were targeting Islamic Jihad militants there, who they say were preparing for what they called an imminent attack. But at least one civilian, a woman in her 60s, was killed during the firefight between the militants and the Israeli military. The deadliest single day for Palestinians in the West Bank in over a year, and what's already been an incredibly violent and deadly period for both Palestinians and Israelis. In response, militants in Gaza fired rockets into Israel. No reported injuries yet. And the Palestinian Authority leadership announced in a dramatic move that they are ceasing security cooperation with Israel.
In light of the continuous hostilities on the sons of our people and the complete disregard to the signed agreements, including the security agreement, we consider the security coordination with the government of occupying Israel as non-existent starting now.
It's not the first time the security coordination has been cut. In 2020, the Palestinian Authority
30 seconds, we'll come out
in
U.S.
response to
kills.
Israeli plans to annex part of the West Bank as part of former President Donald Trump's peace plan. But coordination resumed 6 months later when annexation came off the table. It's not clear how long this cutoff will last, but the U.S. State Department is warning it's not the right step at this moment.
You're about 30
A tense
out.
time in this region as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken prepares for a visit here.
Standard out, Q. Look about U.S. kills.
CNN, Jerusalem.
Q, take where you're pilot
The US military has killed a senior ISIS leader and 10 members of the terror group in an operation in Somalia. The Biden administration says Bilal al-Sudani helped fund a network of ISIS affiliates around the world, including in Afghanistan.
He was hit with sanctions in 2012 for training terrorists. Officials say the operation provided valuable information for the intelligence community. CNN's David McKenzie, following things from Johannesburg. What do you think that information was, David?
Well, Max, what they're looking, I'm sure, to find is the details of an expanding network of influence of ISIS in Africa and the funding streams. It is interesting and notable that this commando raid was obviously long planned, authorized by the president, I'm sure, and executed on Thursday in the very northern part of Somalia. And Max, this kind of intelligence would be extremely helpful to the US, which seems to be focusing some of their efforts, of course, in targeting ISIS in this continent and beyond when it comes to those financial links. The last time I saw the name of Bilal al-Sudani, the terror leader who was killed, was in association with an alleged ISIS cell here in South Africa that the US Treasury announced late last year in terms of funding for the terror group. Now, it is a name that hasn't been bandied about all that much, but you look at the comments from the Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, saying al-Sudani was responsible for fostering the growing presence of ISIS in Africa and funding the group's operations worldwide. He went on to say that it will make the US safer by targeting him. There were no casualties in the civilian population, according to US officials. One commander was injured by a service dog in that operation. But it speaks to this tactic, I think, of trying to squeeze ISIS where it hurts, where it is the money. Follow the money, as they say. And in this case, it seems they have successfully taken out at least one particularly important, in their mind, financial go-between, it seems, of the ISIS group here in Africa, and according to US officials, extending as far afield as Afghanistan. Max, Bianca?
And take.
David, in Johannesburg, thank you.
Right on camp, take.
Manhattan jury has convicted a man on all counts for the deadly terror attack on a New York bike path 5 years ago. Saifullah Saipov, a native of Uzbekistan, was found guilty on all charges. Now, a jury must decide whether to impose the death penalty.
Saipov struck cyclists and pedestrians when he drove a rented truck into a west side bike path in 2017, killing 8. Prosecutors say he was inspired by ISIS. It's New York City's deadliest terror attack since 9/11. Haiti's capital is reeling from violent protests against a string of recent police killings.
Protesters attacked the country's main airport and the Prime Minister's residence in Port-au-Prince on Thursday. At least 10 police officers have been killed by armed gangs just over the past week. Reuters reports the Prime Minister was flying back from Argentina and was stuck at the airport for a while before returning to his home.
The killing of black motorist Tyree Nichols has already touched a nerve in parts of America, and the police video of the incident is said to be extremely graphic. Now that footage is set to be released to the public, details coming up.
And that has many communities across the US preparing for protests and bracing for possible unrest. Details on that and much more coming up ahead.
And a new testimony in the trial of a South Carolina man accused of murdering his wife and son. The first responder describes a grisly scene to the court. That story will return.
And we're right back faster. 3 minutes 15. We'll start with the jib bump. Max has got his top story side panel.
Max will have it, and then Bianca will pick up in page 32,
you are,
looking ahead here to the police preparing for
correct.
mass protests with Whitney Wilds look live.
You are correct. You might forget. It's not that cold.
It's been snow.
Better not snow. So no more live shots in our program. I don't know what's up with that.
Because no one else wanted to come up. I tried.
They're all at the bar.
They probably are.
It's a little early or late for me.
I know you were telling me that you don't go home and drink. I go home and drink.
No, I can't. Gives me reflux and all kinds of things all night long.
Let me check it. I could just pick up that past experience has taught many communities to be prepared, and then we could just get into Whitney Wild.
One minute. Seconds. Jib bump coming in, then Max gets his side panels, top stories. Then we'll do single Bianca on 12. I have faith. I've worked with you long enough to have faith. It's not like it's your first day. 15. Stand by up on the bump. And up on the bump, music. Track 11.
Welcome back to CNN News. I'm Max Foster. If you're just joining us, let me bring you up to date with the top stories this hour. The city of Memphis, Tennessee is expecting to release graphic video on Friday showing the violent encounter between police and 29-year-old Tyree Nichols earlier this month. Nichols died of his injuries 3 days later. Now all five officers have been charged with second-degree murder as well as other serious offences. At a candlelight vigil last night, Nichols' mother pleaded for non-violent protests after the video is made public. Police forces across the country are bracing for protests in their cities and monitoring the developments in Memphis very closely.
On camera,
Past experience has taught many communities to be prepared. For more on what's happening now across the United States, here's CNN's Whitney Wild.
Really trying to take. That's not a great name, Whitney Wild.
What is so clear from our reporting is that law enforcement around the country is very aware this is part of a national shared pain, and they understand that people may be inclined to act upon that pain, hopefully peacefully, but sometimes not. The Major Cities Chiefs Association, one of the leading professional law enforcement organizations, has convened several calls with dozens of member agencies to share information. Memphis Police, as well as the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, provided some information on those calls, according to sources. And to give a few examples of how law enforcement agencies are preparing, here in Washington, D.C., police have met with members of the clergy. They're adding police staffing throughout the city. On Capitol Hill, police are adding staffing as well. In Atlanta, officers are going to be on 12-hour shifts. Agencies such as Minneapolis, Nashville, and Los Angeles police are telling CNN they are closely monitoring the situation in their own cities as well as in Memphis as they develop their own operational plans. The Major County Sheriff's Association told CNN multiple sheriff's departments are talking to community and faith-based leaders ahead of this video's release, trying to embrace the community. And they added that their organization is engaging with intelligence command staff around the country at various departments to ensure there is an accurate flow of information, both to law enforcement and then through law enforcement to the communities, because in these moments, accurate, clear information is so critical, especially when the country is bracing for what could be a very horrific video. Whitney Wild, CNN, Washington.
The community has been demanding to see the video footage that will be released in the coming hours. At that vigil in Memphis on Thursday night, Nichols' mother said those marching to demand justice for her son should remain peaceful. Earlier, she remembered Nichols as a loving son.
Robbie, try to take 1 minute here.
My son. Nobody's perfect, okay? Nobody.
Keyable pilot
but he was damn near.
We can't animate this one.
He had my name tattooed on his arm, and that made me proud, because most kids don't put their mom's name. But he did. My son was a beautiful soul.
All I know is my son was a great, great kid. He didn't deserve what he got. Now what he deserves is justice.
He was a human pinata for those police officers. It was an unadulterated, unabashed, non-stop beating.
Accused without the mic, stand by your pilot. And bring in your pilot.
We'll have much more on this story in the coming hour. CNN's Don Lemon will speak with the Tyree Nichols family on CNN this morning during the 8 a.m. Eastern hour.
China's consulate in San Francisco says 5 of the 7 people killed in Monday's Half Moon Bay shooting were Chinese nationals.
The suspect, 66-year-old Chung Li Zhao, is also a Chinese citizen. He is charged with 7 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder for the attack.
The White House held a moment of silence on Thursday during an event marking the Lunar New Year. The Half Moon Bay shooting is just one of at least 40 mass shootings this month, more than in any other start of the year on record.
Roll tracker to B, 15 seconds.
Silence is complicity.
Cross rolling to C.
Silence is complicity.
Let's do a
We
quick
cannot
one.
be
Something
silent.
generic.
I will not
Straight
be
to
silent.
C sound.
And one more thing. We're going to ban assault weapons again in a 5-year war.
Roll tracker to C. This becomes a voiceover.
I want to
Face
call
of
and see how
danger.
you're doing, and thank you for taking such incredible action in face of
Q.
danger. I don't think you understand just
President Joe Biden there calling the man who disarmed the suspect in the Monterey Park shooting to thank him for his act of bravery. The first responder on the scene of the killings, the South Carolina wife and her adult son, meanwhile, testified on Thursday. The officer told the court what he saw in his initial interactions with the suspect, Alex Murdoch, who is accused of the murders. CNN's Diane Gallagher reports.
Right, tracker take a 250. Medium big with B to C.
Weeping in court today, watching body cam video from the first law enforcement officer on the scene of the murders of his wife and son that he's accused of committing. A stark contrast to the way the officer described his demeanor that night.
He was upset, but I did not see any visible
this
tears.
is
The
it,
body
last
cam
one
video,
forever
when
anyway.
graphic in nature, only shown to the judge, jury, and attorneys.
I do.
Yeah.
Sergeant Daniel Green, the
soon as
first
Greg shows
responder
up, I'm
to
outta here.
arrive, describing the scene.
I could see the male victim laying on the ground to my left, as well as the female victim on the ground to my right. There was a large deal of blood that had pooled around his body. There appeared to be a large amount of blood around each of them, as well as brain matter.
As well as his immediate interaction with Murdoch.
His immediate reaction was to start telling me about an incident that had happened with his son with a boating accident.
He's been getting threats. Most of us been denying stuff we didn't take serious. You know, he's been getting like punched. I know that's what it is.
The defense leaning into that as a possibility that someone else had a motive to kill.
But Mr. Murdoch indicated to you that there were threats made against Paul.
He did.
And that he even got in a fight once about it.
I believe he said punched.
Punched, okay. And so on the scene, he believed that Paul's death was connected to someone angry about the boat case.
But that immediate interaction, significant to the prosecution's theory for Murdoch as well. It dates back to a 2019 boat crash that killed 19-year-old Mallory Beach. Murdoch's son, Paul, was charged and awaiting trial for allegedly operating the boat while drunk.
1 minute to that
Mallory's
effect.
family sued Alec Murdoch.
T's coming.
Prosecutors say that lawsuit threatened to unveil years of Murdoch's financial misdeeds.
Within a few minutes of you arriving, he's the one that brought up the boat incident, is
He
that
did.
correct? And he offered that right out of the gate as a possible explanation for what happened here, is that right?
Yes.
Nothing further here.
Murdoch even mentions the boat crash in previously unreleased portions of the 911 call played Thursday in court.
What did you do to preserve those?
The tire tracks? Nothing.
Meanwhile, the defense worked to paint the crime scene as messy and at times chaotic.
So nobody attempted to determine whether those were.
Accused back to you.
Maggie's footprints, Paul's footprints, or at least at night, there was no effort by you or your department to preserve those.
15
me,
seconds.
no, I
Back
cannot
to
speak
you.
for
T's
everyone else.
next. B to C.
Court will resume on Friday morning
10
with the
seconds.
prosecution continuing to question from its long list of witnesses. Diane Gallagher, CNN, back to you.
We're all good to your fact. Bum
Visibility
chili.
drops down to
Sees
zero
that
as
demanding.
wintry weather creates chaos on Wyoming highways, and more bone-chilling weather is on the way for much of the
We're all good to
western
see
West.
demanding.
Plus demanding justice, families of the victims of
Stand
two
by,
deadly
Master
Boeing
Control.
crashes say the plane maker must be held accountable. We'll
And-
hear from them next.
Right back, Master. Alright, H coming in.
Coming up, we've got our quick animation looking into our investigation into the Southwest meltdown back in December. There's a little bit of a SOT there. Then we'll segue into the Boeing hearing with Larry Mendoza's Look Live. I mean the WT-40 cologne.
You say that as if it was a bad thing.
Love it. Right around the corner for Valentine's Day. Who doesn't love the smell of WD-40 on a man? Brings a whole nother meaning to squeakiness, right?
I could make a really crude joke.
I
but I'm not
know.
going to. I'll just leave it at that. You know, if your at 5 in the morning, if your mind can't go in the gutter, you know, something's wrong. Minute 30. Oh, that's true. It's not fried yet. It's true, some of them just want to be in vision the whole time. You don't need to mention names, hard to write, you know. 30-ish. Alright, H did a 2-shot with airline posts. You okay over there? Why don't you comment something up? 2, 1. Roll up on H. Somebody on cam. And chug them both. Dissolve out.
The holiday meltdown at Southwest has cost the airline dearly. The company reports a $226 million loss in the fourth quarter of last year and warns of more red ink in the first quarter of this year too.
Millions of passengers left stranded last month when Southwest cancelled more than 16,000 flights over 8 days. The CEO of rival United Airlines says Southwest's systems desperately need an upgrade.
Robbie, track to beat, 24 seconds.
You can't run an airline like this in 2019, and the reason is because the system is stressed to the max. There's strains everywhere, whether it's in security or at FAA staffing or systems, having enough pilots. And when something happens, the straws are much more likely to break the camel's back. And you've seen it over and over again with other airlines having, either bad operational issues or sometimes going all the way into meltdown.
Dissolve, cube, track them.
Southwest says it's testing software fixes
two-shot
for its
Boeing,
crew
please.
scheduling system, and it's cooperating with the U.S. Transportation Department investigation.
On camera,
The
take A,
Boeing
and B
pleaded
sound.
not guilty in a US federal court on Thursday to charges of conspiring to defraud the United States over the safety of its 737 MAX jets.
Roll,
The
take
families of the victims of 2 deadly
Sound
crashes
like B
involving the
coming.
airliner. The arraignment is the beginning of their efforts to find justice for their loved ones. They're objecting to a US Justice Department agreement which would resolve the investigation into the design of the jets.
Roll B, track to B, 30 on the bite.
Nobody should have to go through this.
No tag here, we'll move on.
We're here today to make a statement, no third crash, and whatever that takes.
It's been 3 years, but for everybody standing here,
15.
for all of these people, we are still stood at March 10th. We are still stuck on that
To their
day.
loved ones.
We live in a pain, in distress, unstable ground.
5 seconds.
And yet,
To their loved
the
ones.
murderer, walking free, going home to their loved ones.
Thank you, take.
The
Sound
crash
like
of a
C
Lion
coming.
Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 killed 346 people from all around the world. And both of those planes were 737 MAX jets from Boeing.
So far, no one from the plane manufacturer has been held responsible. One man who lost his brother tells CNN's Larry Madowo that's unacceptable.
Roll, track, take C, minute 55.
Family
Weather
members have
transition
spoken to
next.
want Boeing and its executives held criminally responsible for what they see as causing the death of 346 people in the Indonesia crash in 2018 and Ethiopia crash in 2019. I spoke to one family member who lost his brother in Ethiopian Airlines crash the flight 302.
I'll move it.
You are put in a position whereby there was no other choice but death. But those who did it knew and continued. After the Lion Air crash, they continued to conceal the safety issues and the defect for profit.
You lost your brother in Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. You're also a lawyer in Kenya, so you know the law. Who do you hold responsible for his death?
After this, we've got a quick weather trends into our U.S. weather latest. We've got a quick update on Japan being cold. And then we've got COVID wipe looking at FDA with COVID vaccines.
To be clear,
Similar to
you
flu.
want the senior executives
Quick update on
who were in charge of
malaria,
Boeing at the time to go to jail.
Malawi and cholera. And then it is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and then 1 T's to commercial.
Not only for accountability for the deaths.
The new updates here with New Zealand, I'm pushing that down into the 50s block so we can just update that with new VO and new
These
updates.
family members feel that the
30
settlement
seconds.
that the Trump Justice Department arrived at with Boeing shields the company, and that should be thrown out. They also especially take issue with what they feel as the Boeing narrative after the Lion Air crash in Indonesia
20
and Ethiopian
seconds.
Airlines crash. that
Standard IQ,
appeared to
weather-
blame it on
weather
pilot
transition
error.
to
These
11.
were third world pilots who didn't know how to operate this aircraft. These family members say Boeing deliberately manufactured a defective aircraft and should pay for that. People
5
should go to jail,
seconds.
they tell me.
Standard IQ.
Larry Madowo, CNN, Nairobi.
And his trans. Q.
Freezing
18
barely
minutes,
begins to
18.
describe really what millions of Americans will be facing in the coming
And
days.
dissolve.
Winter weather
Straight
alerts
ahead.
are in effect from Colorado to Washington State because of an Arctic front that's slowly moving across the
Right,
west.
today.
The weather's already wreaking havoc on highways in Wyoming, where it led to numerous crashes. 9 western states are
Two-shot parts
expected to
of
see
Japan.
heavy snow, including up to 5 feet in the mountains, while wind gusts could reach up to 70 miles an hour in some areas. That can create wind chills as low as minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which could cause frostbite in as little as half an hour.
On camera, take.
To
Parts
Japan
of
now,
the
where some are calling the record low temperatures hitting the country a once-in-a-decade cold
Robbie,
snap.
take
Kyoto registered a
Corona wipe
bone-chilling
next.
minus 16 degrees Celsius, about 2 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, this is just
in
the
central
Corona wipe,
Tokyo,
just the
the
quick
lowest
switch
temperature was not as
thing.
bad, but still a chilly minus 3
Still make
Celsius,
Corona wipe.
about 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Meteorologists are urging people to watch out for blizzards, heavy snow, frozen roads, and turbulent ocean waves. They say that the cold front is expected to weaken on Friday, but then gain more strength again
And
on
it's
Saturday.
trans. FDA panel.
The US is looking into
C is
making
next.
COVID-19 vaccinations more like a yearly flu shot, including a potential single shot that could immunize
Wrong.
against both.
Take C.
The idea is part of a new simplified vaccination strategy recommended by advisors to the Food and Drug Administration.
Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax all say they're in the early stages of testing
All
a
right,
single
two-shot with
shot for
outbreak
both
next.
COVID and the flu. In the meantime, the FDA advisory panel voted unanimously on Thursday to have all vaccines used the same formula,
Okay.
targeting the same strains,
good.
regardless of the manufacturer. The FDA must sign off on the panel's recommendation before it goes into effect.
Cameron, take outbreak.
The health ministry in Malawi says
AIDS
a cholera outbreak has left more than 1,000 people dead in less than a year. More than 31,000 cholera cases have been reported across the Southeast African country.
The situation is not as deadly in Kenya, but still critical. Where the World Health Organization says people who fled drought and conflict and sought refuge in Kenya have pushed the death toll from the cholera outbreak there to 79. There have been more than 4,000 cases reported in Kenya since the outbreak began in October.
On camera, take world marks.
And today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which also marks the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. It's a time to honour the 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis, whose other victims include minorities, the disabled, and LGBTQ+ individuals. The husband of US Vice President, Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff, is visiting key sites in Poland and Germany this week, including Auschwitz, where my grandfather was in prison.
And dissolve, right?
It's a big day in terms of memories. US President Joe Biden released a statement reading, as we join nations around the world in bearing witness to this dark chapter in our shared history, we also honour survivors and their stories, pledging to always remember and to keep faith with that sacred vow, never again.
You're watching CNN Newsroom live from London. We'll see you after this short break.
Roll master.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It just didn't feel good coming into Australia.
Weather transition
No,
out to 11.
Okay, is that VO gonna make for 99?
Still working on the script too.
I've got a VO for 99.
I just put an update to get that VO in. The script was fine. I
Peter
just
Max
didn't
has
know whether or
great
not we wanted
large
to get.
hands, and that's a very small coffee cup. So he's got freakishly big hands.
Brilliant, thank you. So we're going to come up on quick weather trends with these new details here with the New Zealand floods. We've got new video with the emergency calls with the airport, so that VO should be in there. Then we'll segue over to Australia with the Open with women's, and then we got Djokovic with his father with Zed. And then I have floated 53 here with that asteroid. So we will then go right into Fireball Whiskey, WD-40 Cologne, and then a CNN special ending here, and then our closing goodbye. Gotta make you work, especially on your Friday. Sorry to interrupt you really quickly, I'm so sorry. Can you check your email, Bianca? Marina just sent you something, sorry.
2 minutes. Weather trends coming in, state emergency declared.
She's not in here, she
A
just,
and B.
whenever you get a chance, it's no rush.
And away we go.
Just double checking, but 99's okay now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the script was fine, it was just adding that new view.
Well, yeah,
Cool, cool.
script come out from the airport too.
Oh, brilliant.
Minute 30.
What did you show me?
Yeah, 35. Ronald Reagan was president when I started.
According to weather that just alerted out, it was January's monthly rainfall it was literally in 1 hour.
I started here.
All of January in 1 hour.
We moved here about 6 months after, 6 months before I started. So yeah, 1 minute. So everybody was talking about Techwood and all the things going on over at Techwood. They used to talk about they used to tape wrestling on the weekend mornings, 1 floor up from the newsroom, so you'd hear banging sounds as they were slamming each other around. 10 seconds here. Weather trends to 11 with state of emergency. Four, 3, 2, and trans up. Dragon both.
A state of emergency has just been declared in New Zealand's capital due to major flooding caused by heavy rain and storms. This was the scene at the city's airport earlier. Officials in Auckland are responding to over 400 emergency calls.
The raging waters have forced many there to evacuate their homes and seek higher ground. New Zealand's meteorological department says even more rain is expected over the next few days as well. Already more than triple the average January rainfall has fallen in a single day.
And of course this is right in the middle of summer in New Zealand, so it is all of summer's rain, what they're saying.
And it seems to have really caught them out. We now know who will face off in the women's final on Saturday at the Australian Open tennis tournament.
Take C.
Elena Rybakina, the reigning Wimbledon champ, is through to her second Grand Slam final. The 23-year-old, who was born in Moscow but represents Kazakhstan, beat two-time Australian Open champion Victoria Azarenka in her semi-final.
Rybakina will face Arina Sabalenka after 3 Grand Slam semi-final defeats. The 24-year-old from Belarus has finally booked her place in a major final after a straight sets win over Magda Linette of Poland.
Father, Serbian tennis star Novak Djokovic is responding to criticism for posing with supporters of Vladimir Putin outside an arena at the Australian Open.
Video shows him standing next to a man holding a Russian flag with Putin's face on it, wearing a t-shirt with a Z, symbolising support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The elder Djokovic says his family, quote, has lived through the horror of war and we wish only Putin had no intention of being caught up in this. He also says he's watching his son's match right now from home, so there's no disruption.
Of course, the political context of this is quite interesting, with Serbia long being torn between closer ties with the West and the fraternal bonds they have with Russia. And in Belgrade, the capital, there were quite a few rallies in support of Putin when Russia invaded Ukraine, so that's why it's particularly sensitive and volatile.
Yeah, and he says he just sort of ended up there, but it, obviously it feeds into that national debate. The maker of Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey is facing a lawsuit because mini bottles of the alcoholic beverage don't actually contain whiskey.
We're talking about the mini bottles of Fireball seen here, not the original. The smaller bottles are commonly found in gas stations and supermarkets.
The label on the miniature bottles described it as a malt beverage with whiskey flavours. The $5 million lawsuit filed in Illinois accuses the company of false advertising. Now, if you've got a person who can't get enough of the smell of WD-40, you're in luck. Are there those people?
I was just going to say, who are those
A few
people?
mechanics, maybe. That unique aroma can now be yours without spending much.
Phew. A New York art collective has recreated the smell of the multi-use lubricant in a cologne. Smells like WD-40 retails for $48 plus shipping, and according to the group's website, it's already sold out. What household product would you like to smell like?
I just want to say the genius is in the title, smells like WD-40.
Yeah. Like monkey wrench and grease.
30 seconds.
We're being moved on.
We are. So before we go, all of us here at CNN want to say a very special goodbye to our director tonight, Dave Anderson. Dave has been directing at CNN for 35 years, and today is his last day, and this is his very last show before he retires. So from all of us here in London and those of you, Dave, in Atlanta, we wish you many, many happy returns on your retirement.
We will. Enjoy it.
And we'll miss you.
I'll be joining us here on CNN News with my Max Foster.
And I'm Megan Noblin. Early Start is up next, right here on CNN.
All right, get out on time, fairly.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, it's been an adventure.
Thank you, guys.
Oh yeah, I'll be around. I may come out and harass you guys sometime.